Good afternoon, friends and colleagues. Welcome to United Board's Alumni Webinar Series, the third session in our five-part series on AI and higher education. We have with us Professor Venky Shankaraman from Singapore Management University. Welcome, sir. And
Thank you.
I now request Christian Ong, our Educational Technology Officer, to introduce to us Professor Venky. Over to you, Christian.
It's really my pleasure to introduce you to our today's resource person for our workshop. And I first met Dr. Venky in Hong Kong during the conference, and and then I had a chance to meet with him over a dinner, and we had some discussions on the impact of AI in higher education, and we had a very detailed discussion on it. And we also, spoke at length about, the rapid shift by AI in higher education, and I was also, impressed by his, deep technical expertise, and also, yeah, how he has been, connected with higher education. That's why I have invited him to speak at one of our workshop series here on AI.
What I'm going to do is, I'm going to present probably for 35, 40 minutes, and then I'm going to spend most of the time in having discussions and, trying to address any questions that people may have in this specific area of work. So on completing the session, I hope what you would get out of it is to be able to identify key opportunities and challenges in how we can responsibly integrate AI to enhance students' digital fluency and also their domain-specific expertise. So it's not just generic use of AI, but also how do you use AI in the context of a specific discipline. So for example, if it's a Bachelor of Business Management student who's doing a major in marketing, how do we ensure that that person has the ability to use the latest AI tools in when they get into the profession, okay? And analyze how universities can balance the use of AI tools. So what I mean here is this is the double-edged sword, okay? On one hand, we have a problem. The problem is this, that as higher education institutions, our job is to ensure that our students have the foundation skills in, say, critical thinking, problem solving, in collaboration skills, being able to collaborate with other people to solve problems, communication skills, so on and so forth. Okay. And on the other hand, so we also have to ensure, so when we are looking at these skills, like critical thinking, problem solving skills, the big challenge that we are posed with AI is that if students start using these tools, they may not be using their ability to think. Okay, this is a big problem. And I don't know about you guys, I'm already facing that problem. Now, every time I write an email, looks like I have to check with ChatGPT to see whether it can be rephrased better. And the other day I was wondering, all these years I have lived without any of these tools. So how come now that I have to rely on trying to use these tools? And yes, they are available, but the challenge is if, at least for many of us, we have lived an age where these tools didn't exist, or even computers didn't exist. And we have developed the basic foundation skills, and therefore we can operate without these tools. Whereas for students entering into universities now, they are relying a lot on these AI tools. And the problem is, if they start doing everything using these AI tools, then how do we ensure that they develop these foundation skills? On the other hand, the industry will use these AI tools, okay? Whether we like it or not, they are already using it, okay? And why they are using it? Because the AI tools helps with improving productivity, efficiency, provides better insights on the data that the organization uses for making decisions. So they would expect the graduates coming out of universities have the ability to use the AI tools. So that's what is the balance I'm talking about. How do you ensure that these students have the basic foundation skills, but at the other end, they also have the ability to use the AI skills when they move into the industry. So now I want to talk about how do we address this? Okay, one way to address this, of course, is don't do anything. But I don't think that's an option because in higher education, we really have to work with these tools and ensure our students have got the right balance, as I mentioned, in terms of trying to uh, do things independently, add value to whatever they are doing through their own independence, but at the same time, have the ability to use the tools so they can be more productive and efficient. Okay. So in November 2022 is when the that GPT was released. Okay. And what happened was immediately after that, at least in my university, early January, we already had students using it. And this was from the head of the English Communications Center. And he sent me an email saying, Venky, I'm going to penalize few students. And I asked him for what? And he said, I gave them an essay assessment and they had used Chat GPT. Okay. And it was just a very early version of Chat GPT, but they had already used it. So then my question to him was like, okay, how many students? He said 11. So how do you know that they have used it? And his answer was, out of 11, 4 had accepted that they had used it. Then the question was, okay, what about the remaining 7? And he wasn't sure. And that's when it struck us, oh my God, what are we going to do? We cannot penalize the students because there's no way to prove that they had used any of these tools. And that is one big problem. For many of you who are in academia, we use Turnitin in the past, and Turnitin will check for plagiarism by looking at whether two different submissions are similar and what level of similarity, so on and so forth, right? But with AI tools, that's not possible. And I know Turnitin came up with an AI tool, which we also kind of subscribe. And so what I did was to set up a team, which was mainly professors from the School of Computing, to kind of test the tool to see whether you can really identify whether the students had used the tool or not. And the report they came up was that no, they cannot. Okay. There was a lot of false positives where the student had not used it and the system was flagging that they had used. And then again, negatives as well. So then we decided this is something that we need to act upon. So some universities went ahead and then they said, let's ban use. Other universities started to use more of these AI detectors like copy leaks, chat GPT-0, Quillbot, so on, so forth. Okay. What we did at SMU is we said, okay, we need to have some kind of framework on use of Gen AI. So we developed a framework. If you do a Google search on SMU framework for use of Gen AI tools, it will take you to the page. Okay. So ours was, what we said was is AID. The framework was AID for short. What that means, A for adapt, I for incorporate, and D for detect. Adapt meaning we told all of faculty that you have to adapt your assessment to the age of AI. Okay, so that means typically for this English communication course, the first thing to do was adapt all the assessments so that you don't give them a take-home essay rating to start with, okay? And that's one thing we did. Second is incorporate. We said you have to try and incorporate the use of these tools as part of the assessment, because then the students learn how to use it more responsibly. For example, again, going back to this English communication course, what they did was the first draft the student had to produce using the tool. Then they would compare, they'll bring it to class, and then they will critique what the tool has produced, and they would come up with ideas on how that essay can be further improved. Okay. Of course, they will do fact verification and all that. That is what the prof was teaching them on how to evaluate the essay that was generated by ChatGPT. Okay. So the challenge in any university is how do you ensure this across all the different schools, multiple disciplines. Okay, each discipline has its own specific type of assessments and extra. So what we did was we started to train our faculty on the use of AI, Gen AI tools. We, just like many of you would have done, run, workshop sessions, sharing sessions, so on and so forth. Okay. And the D, as I said in AID, is detect. So we have told faculty you must adapt and incorporate, which means if you do those two, you don't need to detect anything. Okay. Because you are not going to be in a situation where you give them a take-home essay writing and then you have to detect whether they use ChatGPT or any of the other tools. Okay. So that's what we did. And the detect, we deliberately made it very complex. And I'm not going to go into the details of that. It's called a drive process, or the drive approach for investigating unauthorized use. So it made it very difficult for faculty that if you really want to detect, you have to do A, B, C, so on and so forth. And in Singapore, one other university actually had issues where they had penalized the students and students actually sued the university. Okay, not at SMU, but some other university in Singapore, we had this problem. So I think this is what is the challenge, because if you unfairly penalize the students, they're going to be unhappy as well, and that will have repercussions. At the same time, as I told, it's not very easy to even detect plagiarism when they use AI tools. Okay. So this was all done. This was like 2023. Okay, then we launched some guidance for our students on guide to learning with AI. And as I said, we developed teaching resources for our faculty so that they can know how to incorporate AI tools in teaching. But what I feel for 2025 is something different. Okay. One thing is, in the meantime, over the last few years, there have been lots of publications on how there's evidence of negative impact on cognitive skills when students start to use these tools. So here are some examples of research that I'm sharing with you. So negative correlation between frequency of AI use and critical thinking ability. Again, negative impact of AI chatbot use on creative writing abilities. So it is negatively impacting the students' thinking. Okay, so there's no doubt on that, with some of these research already proving that. Reduce critical and analytical thinking skills. And on the right in 2024, you see the research they came up, the results they came up with. Use of ChatGPT increased tendency for procrastination, which means you give the students an assignment, they leave it to the last minute and very quickly use the tool and put together something, and then they're submitting it. Okay. And this is also affecting their memory and academic performance. Now at SMU, recently I had meeting with our student association, and one of the interesting things that they told us was, Venky, we are losing confidence. We don't know what is the value add that we can bring, because these tools seem to be very good. And this is the challenge that I also face. Recently I was trying to play with it. I took a table of contents and I put it into the system and said, write me a 7,000 page, a 7,000 word essay on this content. And it produced pretty decent stuff. And I can see that from that, my workload in kind of looking at all the whatever claims it's making in the essay, I just need to do some fact verification. I need to ensure I add in the appropriate references, so forth. I can have a chapter. Okay, this is a serious problem, right? So students are going to rely on using these tools to do this kind of work. And the other research from that, which I want to share, is also where I think this was in MIT, where they're trying to actually look at the brain activity. So they divided the students into 3 groups. One was brain only, the second was using a large language model, and the third was search engine. So each group, the first group wrote an essay only using the brain, which means they come into the class, they're given a piece of paper, they got to write an essay. The second group was to use LLM, and the third to use Google search engine. Okay. And then they also try to do some transition to say, okay, you start with the LLM. Now, then you use brain only. You start with brain only, and then you use LLM, right? So they also tried some transition, and they wanted to explore when they switch from LLM. If the LLM group switches to brain in essay writing, and the brain only switch to LLM, what happens? And what they observed was this. Very clearly, you see here the brain activity. Here, they actually measured the brain activity using EEG, which is like putting some wiring into your in your head and measuring some responses, which they were able to do using the equipment. Okay. And you see the lowest neural activity in the LLM group. So the group that started with LLM, their neural activity was very minimal. Okay. And lowest self-report ownership of essay. So, and they were not even able to quote their own work, which they claimed to be their own work, but they had used the LLM to write the essay. And then the interesting thing is, when you use LLM first and you move to the brain, showed lower neural connectivity. But on the other hand, if you start with the brain, that means you start with none of these tools, and then you go try to use the LLM to kind of get it to a better shape, seem to have higher recall. Okay, so this is clearly indicating that any of these tools that we use, in this case, it was purely for essay writing, it does have an impact on the brain activity, as well as you know, if there are less interconnections in the brain neurons, very slowly you will lose the ability to think. Okay. So with this, we really need to look at how we can, what we can do, how we can address this issue, right? So, so what are the challenges? Over-reliance on AI. Students may outsource thinking, and it'll definitely, the research shows that it weakens critical thinking and problem solving. Curriculum relevance. I think we also need to ask the question, our traditional program structure may not meet AI-driven skills demands because we have not integrated these AI skills into our curriculum structure. Okay. Ad hoc, maybe in some universities, professors are including AI as part of the course, but there is no systematic integration. Assessment validity. Take-home assessments may fail to measure original thinking because, as I just explained, the students will rely on AI tools, and that has an impact. on their original thinking. Equity and access. This is also a big problem because I was talking to some students and I realized some of them, the first thing they do when they join a university is go and get paid subscription for these tools. It's not very expensive. It's only $20. And so in many countries, that's very affordable. So they just go and get the actual license to use the full version of the tool. And this I have observed in both undergraduate students and postgraduate students. It's like going and buying textbook. In those days, students go buy textbook. Now just go get the subscription of these tools. Okay. And some of them actually, if you're very wealthy, you can actually get more than one of these tools and you can do some comparisons. You can take the output from one and refine it in the other. You can do all kinds of things. Okay. So the digital divide could widen because some students will have access to these tools and others will not have. And this unequal AI access will impact learning. Okay. And then ethical and societal literacy. Understanding bias, privacy, and social impact is crucial. Most of these tools are trained in data from the US and the Western world. And so whatever they create will be based on that bias. Okay. And this will definitely have impact on privacy and social impact, as I said, also because of the equity and access, it will affect. Okay. And then finally, also the issue is faculty readiness. This is also a challenge. Professors need training. And one of the challenges is also because professors are expected to teach, are expected to do research, they're also expected to do service. And some professors in some disciplines, of course, have an added advantage. If you're in computing, you are developing these tools, you're working closely. But if you're in other disciplines like social science or languages, you will have to take that extra effort to go and spend time learning these tools. Okay, so these are some of the challenges that we have. So, and also, how does AI, reshape the skills the students need? Okay, preparing students to think, create, and collaborate with AI. So, first is critical thinking and judgments must. So the students must learn to question AI outputs, evaluate sources, distinguish between accurate and misleading information. They got to have that ability. Currently, I don't think we are building this into the curriculum. Okay. Next, students will be expected to work with other human beings. So, okay, in the past, we ensured that we have group projects that will handle it. But now students also have to work with other AI agents. Okay. So I don't think we have done enough to ensure that is addressed because they will have to work with other humans and also work with other AI agents. So they need to know when to rely on AI, when to override it, how to work with it as a partner rather than a replacement. I think many of you in my survey question, you said assistant. So how do you work with this tool as an assistant and not your master? Okay, because I know the problem is with time constraints, you can always treat it as a master. You tell me, I just listen. Whereas, trying to use it as an assistant requires a lot more effort. Then I think both the faculty and the students need to know how these algorithms work. So this morning, I was giving a workshop to accountants on how these algorithms work, because in their own organization, they were using these tools, and increasingly these tools are going to be integrated with enterprise systems like ERP, which accountants use, as well as other business professionals use, like distribution, professional supply chain, so on and so forth, sales, marketing. So you need to know how these algorithms work. I don't mean that everybody needs to know how the mathematics works in these, but at least you need to know what is the concepts behind this, okay? And then the data and the biases shape the outputs. They need to know why that's so, okay? And even non-technical students need to have a working knowledge of how AI systems work. And then creativity and problems solving is another very important aspect, because the AI is going to take more of the repetitive tasks, and therefore students have to develop skills in creative synthesis, innovation, being able to frame complex problems. I always say, once you know what the problem is and you framed it properly, it's easy to solve it. Okay. And finally, ethics, policy, and responsible use. That's very important. Be aware of fairness, accountability. Transparency is a bit difficult with some of these systems because they are black box, especially the ones which rely on techniques like neural networks. They're unable to explain how they came up with an answer. And just like anything else, privacy is going to be more of an issue because these AI systems are going to have a lot of information about us. Okay. So social scientists and accountants need to consider ethical implications of automated decision making, because when you automate, there is going to be a bias based on the data that the systems are trained. So what I am calling for is AI curriculum integration. To do that, the guiding principle should be universality with depth. All students in a university need to gain baseline AI literacy, but also they need to gain discipline-specific AI competence, okay, which means, as I explained earlier, if you're a software engineer, you need to know how to use these tools to, for example, to help you with coding. Okay. Ethics first. I think just focusing on technology is not important. We need to start with teaching ethical, legal, and societal implications along with the technical content for students. Applied and experiential. So I'm urging that we get students to work on more projects so that they learn from complex projects. It's okay to use the tool, but then the project has become very complex. It's not a Mickey Mouse problem. It's really, working with industry. So having industry partnerships where the clients are giving real world projects, which by the very nature will be very complex. And they won't, even with these tools, they will not be able to use it very easily. So if we put them in those situations, then they will know how to best use these tools, and also getting them to work on real data sets and tools. Interdisciplinarity is going to become more important. We have to ensure that students from different schools are working on shared courses and cross-cutting projects by bringing in, like the social science students can bring in the ethical and the societal implications of some AI solution. The technology people can look at the technical feasibility of the solution. The business students can look at the business value of the solution, so on and so forth. And one thing that we need to keep in mind is whatever we do, the rapid change is there in AI. So you've got to have processes which help to refresh content quickly. One of the big challenges in universities is, like, we are heavily focused on quality control. And just to make one small change, you will have to go through, I don't know how many committees. So this is a common problem that many universities are facing. Okay. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the access and inclusion is important, so that is equitable and accessible for all students and all faculty from all schools. Okay. So with this call, what I'm proposing that, universities should start looking at, your 3-year or 4-year degree for here is just an example of what I think we should be doing is year one, do we call it foundation? So here we get the students to develop baseline knowledge. We focus more on strengthening critical thinking. All year one courses, none of it will have take-home assessments. Everything you have to come face to face and do. Probably you got to, think about that. Maybe you can add some one or two situations where the students learn as some AI tool and uses as a support. And as I said, you can incorporate it in the assessment so they can bring in the first draft using the AI tool, or they can start with their brain first and then use the AI tool to add more value to it. So that can be done. And the teaching approach will continue to be classroom-based learning. It can be blended online plus face-to-face, like flipped classroom is possible. Guided exercises using basic AI tools for research and simple analysis. So this we need to get across to all students. And the assessments, probably we need to look at classroom-based assessment, short essays, quizzes. We can ask students to go give them a topic. You can do all the research on the topic. You have to come into the class with just your pen, and we'll give you the paper, and you have to write an essay on that. Okay. Reflective journals is another way that you can have students reflect on the use of these AI tools, how it helped them, how it didn't help them, what it did right, what it did not do right, so on and so forth, right? Analyzing case studies without AI, introductory AI tasks, students compare, as I said, AI generated content with their own. So these are all possibilities, right? And then for year two, move more to applied skills. Apply critical thinking to structured problems. So the problem is not very complex, but reasonably complex, but it's structured. Begin team-based work and working with both other students and AI tools. Okay? And build ethical awareness of AI's limitations and risks. You can use problem-based learning, use of AI tools for data collection, analytics, as well as for presentation. And then the assessment types could be more team projects, okay? Case analysis, where students will critique AI outputs for accuracy and bias. And also mixed method, where part of the assessment is completed by the student and part supported by AI. And there is clear demarcation of their contribution versus the contribution by the tool, okay? And then in year three, what we want to do is to move more to a strategic integration of AI into the curriculum, because now we really want them to be slowly be proficient with use of these AI tools as they move into the graduation phase, right? So the problem should be more complex, open-ended, ability to integrate human creativity with AI-driven insight. So you got to choose those kinds of problems. And we got to strengthen more the collaboration and leadership skills of the students by working in teams. You got to source for industry-linked projects. And as I said, it has to be more messy problems that they have to solve. And they also you got to embed ethical reflection in these assessments, okay? And then the type of assessments could be consultancy projects, applied consultancy project, critical reflection reports, as well as group presentations. And then for year four, I based this on our program, which is a 4-year degree. So we are looking for more demonstrate mastery of critical thinking, problem solving, and AI collaboration. Apply to real-world sponsored projects, deliver practical, ethical, and innovative solutions. So you can, one approach is to focus on capstone projects where they work with NGOs, government, or industry. They work in interdisciplinary teams. The role of the faculty becomes more as a mentor, not instructor. Okay. And then the assessment types definitely could be capstone project deliverables, professional portfolios, and also oral defense from students. Okay. Now, one way to achieve this is to first do a stock taking in your own university. What different schools are doing in terms of AI. Are they developing the AI courses? And as I said, if you had a framework like adapt, incorporate, and detect, how much of this is being properly implemented in different schools, you can do a stock taking. So one way to start is to form an AI curriculum committee, audit the current curriculum for content and gaps, map stakeholder needs, talk to people in the industry, alumni and students, current students, okay? And of course, just like any project, you need to have some seed funding and appoint a program lead. And in 3 to 9 months, you are in phase 2 of the project. So design a common AI literacy module, so which is applicable to all students in the university. Probably look at an AI in society interdisciplinary elective or non-technical reflection, and start piloting 2 or 3 courses that embed AI within a domain for different schools. And then phase 3 is to scale and embed, integrate discipline-specific AI units in core courses, for example, AI in law, AI in social research, AI in accounting. Start launching capstone opportunities that require both human and AI collaboration. So you have a group of students working on the project, but you also have some AI tools that you can use as part of the project group. And then you need to implement some learning analytics to monitor the uptake and outcomes. And in phase 4, make AI literacy mandatory for all new undergraduates. Actually, in Singapore, the Ministry of Education has already told us that all students need to have AI literacy, a common literacy, but also discipline-specific knowledge on how to use AI. Now, the question for us is how we are going to deliver it over the next few years. So you can start formalizing cross-faculty AI minors or certificates, establish industry practicum partnerships, and possibly AI lab resources. And you will need to do regular curriculum review. Okay. So one of the things that we have done at SMU is to come up with a AI for work and life, which will be a online MOOC, which has 30% will be foundation, 20% will be on tools and exploration, so that it's not just the concepts, but the students also have some hands-on experience with the tools. And then 50% will be application in a project. And this can be either an applied solution pathway or a research pathway. And applied solution pathway is, we are focused on Singapore. So looking for a challenge to Singapore's work community or everyday life, and then look at how AI tools can be used to solve that problem, and then get students to prototype, demo, etc., come up with concept ideas. Okay. It could also be research pathway where they are doing more research on how AI tools shaping a particular sector in Singapore, like healthcare or finance. And we get students to use these some AI tools to gather, analyze, and present insights. Okay. So, for example, doing text mining of local policy documents. The output will be a research project, whereas the other one would be actually a prototype, storyboard, or a demo if it's an applied solution pathway. And then going forward, I feel, careers of the future will demand that people learn to work with AI rather than compete against it. So focusing on uniquely human strengths, I think, will become more important now. Okay. So you are going to somehow move to a phase where we leverage AI as a partner. So higher education must move from knowledge transmission towards developing adaptive, critical, and collaborative graduates who can work effectively in AI-rich environments. And we must be prepared to redesign the curriculum as well as the way we deliver the curriculum in terms of the pedagogy, as well as assess students. Okay. And finally, we have to train our faculty, students, and staff to adapt to the changes. Okay.